We did have some good outcomes from courts this week concerning another reformer that the deep state is trying to block and that Bill Gates has been secretly funding opposition to. And that is all the lies and libels being repeated by the media and politicians. They might want a second look at that, because those exact lies and libels were a state court in Maine, appointed, by the way, by a Democratic judge, a judge appointed by a Democratic governor, found completely in favor of Robert Kennedy's case against David Vickery, called Down East Dem at the Daily Kos, for repeating lies and libels. And part of his defense was, hey, the New York Times has repeated these lies and libels. And the judge's like, you've been on notice of these lies and libels from prior suits. The world, by inference, the world is now on notice of those. And that means anybody who repeats these lies and libels can be sued, and a court likely find actual malice, because any basic review would have unearthed these lawsuits and these court findings that these false statements that people have been making about Robert Kennedy are complete libels. And even a liberal Democratic appointed judge in Maine came to that exact same conclusion right on the eve of his confirmation hearings.
Was it a ruling on the merits, or was it on a motion to dismiss?
So it's a ruling on a motion to dismiss, which is always the biggest ruling in a defamation case. Because in a defamation case, it's, hey, can you even allege actual malice? Can you allege an actionable false statement? Or can you just claim it's opinion? Or even if the opinion does have a factual statement, the person had a reasonable basis for it, and it wasn't with reckless disregard and actual malice that the statement was made. So that's why almost all defamation cases come down to, do you win the motion to dismiss or not? And he brought this motion as an anti-SLAPP motion. The judge noted that he wasn't engaged in petitioning activity, so the anti-SLAPP statute of Maine didn't even apply to his case, and said even if it did, substantively, this more than adequately suffices. And I think the judge was probably startled by, this is a guy who's been repeatedly told that he's libeling Kennedy. And instead, because he got out on shenanigans before, like he got out because nobody knew his name, because he was going by an anonymous pseudonym. They didn't know where he lived. That's how he got out of the first ring effort of suits, because it's been going on since 2020. Then I got involved. We were able to locate him and brought suit in New Hampshire. And that's when he finally admitted he resided in Maine. And the federal judge said, well, he lives in Maine, so you're going to have to sue there, not New Hampshire. And he thought he was out because of the statute of limitations in Maine was 2 years. This is something that defamers and libelers are misusing personal jurisdiction law and other forms of immunities, like politicians, to evade libel accountability by manipulating the state in which they make the so-called statement and pretending that's the only place they can be sued, and having complicit courts sadly go along with them too often. But this nitwit thought that because he had previously made the statements and got away with it, the New York Times was making the statements and he thought getting away with it, that he could repeat the statements. And the court was like, no, when you repeat the statements, that's a new form of libel. You are now subject to a new clock on the statute of limitations.
And just no legal advice for anybody out there, but this holds true for anybody who requotes or reaffirms without being critical of, but to rather affirm or ambiguously affirm the truth of the false statements. That you don't just get, well, I'm just sharing a tweet that's already out there, or resharing a tweet. But I just want to read your statement here, Robert. This is a significant win for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., said Robert Barnes, one of Kennedy's attorneys. The court has made it clear that repeating lies about him that have already been proven false is actionable. This sets a strong precedent against those who seek to abuse the First Amendment as a shield for malice. Beautiful. And now people are going to say, well, he might win on the merits. I presume, whether or not this settles before it gets anywhere, you know what you might find on discovery.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, there's all kinds of... The key was establishing this as liable to deter other bad actors. So like the nitwit governor of Hawaii has been running around repeating some of these precise libels that the court found were libelous. If he does it again, he's easily subject to suit now, because there's been all kinds of news about this case. It's a public finding of the case. What the court was saying is, when you're aware of a case that establishes these facts, then that's actual malice if you keep repeating the lies and libels. That's what everybody knows. I mean, that's why they would libel him and then move on to something else quickly in the Senate hearings, because they knew if he was given a chance to respond, that it would be easily proven that these are ridiculous lies and libels about Robert Kennedy. That's what they all know. That's why their only basis to survive was to pretend it's an opinion, to pretend that they could get away with it because they got away with it before, got away with it because the identity of the individual libeling them wasn't known, get away with it because they're in a jurisdiction that's favored by Democrats. And instead, they lost across the board. And if you're going to lose in Maine, you're going to lose everywhere in a case like this. And so so that's the big takeaway is anybody who tries to repeat these libels, Bill Gates, for example, if he tries to repeat them through his various funded organizations, he will be sued along with anyone else. The governor of Hawaii will be sued if he repeats these libels. So the timing was critical because Robert Kennedy's vote is coming up this week to be fully confirmed to the HHS, and his cloture vote happened right after this opinion was announced and publicly broadcast. So what it says is a democratically appointed court who looked at the fundamentals of the case, concluded that people are lying and libeling about him, and that the suit itself provides adequate notice if they continue to lie and libel him, that it constitutes actual malice, and they'll have to defend their actions in discovery. And we've seen CNN with Trump, other people with Trump, etc. When it gets to discovery, suddenly they're not interested in participating. And it's because I'm sure discovery will be embarrassing. How much U.S. aid money might be tied to daily costs, for example? What else is connected to this? Why did daily costs turn on its old ally and spend all this time bashing Robert Kennedy? These are all people that, I suspect we're going to find interesting information in the discovery. Now, you're right. Typically what happens, if you win the motion to dismiss, the case resolves, and that may happen here. We'll see. I don't know. But it's a big win for Kennedy, a big win for the people that have been defamed and smeared by the censorship surveillance state, a big win because of its timing right on the eve of Robert Kennedy's confirmation hearings, and a big win because every single lawyer he talked to and I talked to told me we had no chance to win the case. So it's always nice when you win a case when every other lawyer tells you can't.
Robert, as you're talking, I say, maybe I'll just go look this up. Based on the information available from recent web content and discussions on X, Daily Kos, or Cost, whatever the hell it means, what is KOS, did not receive direct funding from USAID. There have been claims and discussions about this, but according to the clarification on X, the only financial relationship mentioned is that USAID subscribed to Daily Cost publication, specifically noted as spending $44,000 for pro subscriptions to an
That's aiding. There's no reason for anybody paying for subscriptions to
why would the
like
USAID
Politico,
be? First of all, what
for
is
daily costs? What subscription? Right. So that's how they did it. They disguised it as subscriptions and membership fees and other things like this when it was just bribery. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, if USAID was paying Viva Barnes Law, trying to bribe.
They're not paying us. They're not paying us, Robert. They're only subscribing. A voluntary, it's $44,000 a year. Oh, by the way, the Daily Cost, it's called the Cost because it refers to the founder, Markos Moulitsas.
He started off as like this sort of Greek lefty, you can see the progression of the progressive left. It was sort of the Bernie anti-establishment left. It then became part of the deep state apparatus. I'd be curious, did USA decide to subscribe around the same time as Daily Cost suddenly changed its perspective on things like foreign war, on things like the big pharma, things like big food, so on and so forth? It might be interesting.
Yeah, let's see if
I'm sure there's all kinds of interesting discovery in those cases. Robert Kennedy's practically an open book. He had to disclose all of his finances to go through all of this and all the rest.
What would be the suspicious date if it were going to be suspicious, give or take?
I'd have to go back and look at daily costs. It would be 2017, 2018.
Well, I'm going to say
the same time they bribed Bernie, right? Bernie Sanders went from no big pharma money, no big food money, to overnight being the number one recipient of big pharma money. And and my view was they did that to buy him off once he showed support in 2016. Now, that was the carrot. People forget the stick. Remember, they were putting Bernie and his wife under criminal investigation for federal fraud. And my guess is that was the stick to say, hey, instead, Bernie, we'll drop all these cases and give you a big pile of campaign cash. And we'll make sure your book gets bought. For example, why is it Angela Merkel's book is all over U.S. airports? Are people walking through U.S. airports can't wait to read Angela Merkel, where she steals your name as the title of her book in a flagrant copyright violation? It's the book company bribing and paying off Angela Merkel. That's what that is. They often will buy the books themselves. They'll buy them in bunches. They'll buy like 50,000, 75,000, etc. It's disguised bribery. Bernie still pretends that all of a sudden, out of the blue, everybody wanted to buy every book he wrote. And that's why he's a multimillionaire and owns 3 houses. That's why he went from bashing them. Well, you can do his voice good. Remember, he was the millionaires and the billionaires. Now Bernie's like, oh, no, never mind. Let's just focus on the billionaires.
But Robert,
let's not talk about the millionaires.
You might be wrong, but for the right reasons, because the timing, if this is true, is even more suspicious. According to information available, USAID subscribed to Daily Kos in October 2024. That's a month before a relatively monumental event in November 2024.
And by the way, that was on the eve of that was right after the main suit had been filed and the eve of the court conducting hearings in that case. So that's interesting as well. So, I mean, I suspect there'll be interesting dynamics, but big win for Robert Kennedy, big win for true First Amendment freedom. Because I always said, for the First Amendment protects speech, but it also protects against libelous speech and smear campaigns, and that are designed as indirect surveillance and censorship campaigns. The smear campaigns against Robert Kennedy were designed to censor, get people to self-censor, get people to not talk about things, get people to be scared of, oh, I want to protect my position and my pedigree because I'll lose both if I join in Robert Kennedy's criticisms of Big Pharma, Big Food. So it's a big win for everybody in those spaces, as well as a big win for Robert Kennedy, and improves his chances of getting confirmed this week, which I think he, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel will get confirmed.